Have you ever been spoken to in a way that didn't just irritate you, but ignited something dark and volcanic inside you? One of those moments where a single sentence cuts so deep that it echoes in your head for days, burning, boiling, refusing to fade. Today's story is about a man who reached that exact breaking point. A man who was underestimated, dismissed, and humiliated by people who thought they were untouchable. People who believed they could get away with anything. People who picked the wrong man to disrespect. Because the moment they said the words, "If you don't like it, you can leave," they unknowingly triggered their own downfall. They denied my employee's medical claim, laughed off the proof, refused to meet me, and told me I was a low-end client who wasn't worth their time. 4 months later, I pulled every business, every contract, every partner, and every family-owned property away from their company. And then I sat back and watched them collapse until the very roof over their heads was sold. To me, if that made your chest warm with satisfaction, trust me, you haven't heard anything yet. If you've ever been underestimated, talked down to, or treated like you were disposable, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you love stories where karma isn't gentle, it's precise, merciless, and absolutely deserved. Because today's revenge isn't petty, it's poetic. My story doesn't start in an office or a courtroom or some dramatic confrontation. It begins long before that with a lifetime of being labeled the black sheep, born into a wealthy, influential family. I was the middle child, the one everyone assumed would amount to nothing, the one who preferred simple hobbies over high society events, the one who somehow always seemed different. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't reckless. I simply wanted a quiet life, far away from the exhausting expectations of my family name. But even when you try to avoid the spotlight, privilege follows you. Connections dragged me into elite schools, pushed me up military ranks until I became a captain, and eventually sent me to study abroad. I appreciated the opportunities, sure, but I was never close to many people. My circle of friends was small. My life was uncomplicated. And honestly, I liked it that way. When I returned home, I was pushed into a government job, another favor, another door opened by my family name. I did my work, stayed out of trouble, and after a few years, used the connections I had, unwillingly built to start several businesses along the coast. Nothing fancy: restaurants, bars, a cab company, a hotel resort, a cleaning service, a guard service, and a few rental buildings. One business led to another, and slowly, almost by accident, I built an empire. And as my businesses grew, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would treat my employees better than anyone had ever treated me. No exploitation, no disrespect, no corners cut. So one provided comprehensive medical insurance, retirement savings, paid overtime, medical leave, dental and optical benefits, everything I wished someone had given me when I was younger. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I simply believed people deserve dignity. Among my staff was a woman I respected deeply, an older lady who had worked her way up to manager. She was brilliant, loyal, and loved by everyone. She was the kind of employee every employer dreams of. So when she informed us she needed a hysterectomy due to a high risk of cervical cancer, we made sure everything was covered. Leave days? Denied, not because we didn't want her to go, but because I wanted her to stay on official medical. Leave so she wouldn't lose a single cent of her salary. Pre-authorization. Complete. Hospital confirmation. Complete. Insurance approval. Confirmed in writing. Her surgery went well. She recovered quickly. Everything seemed fine until the day she walked into work looking like she had just watched her world crumble. At first, we thought the worst. Cancer, relapse, bad news, something life-changing. But instead, she whispered the one thing we absolutely didn't expect. They gave me a bill. The insurance refused to pay. Just like that, cold, cruel, final. A bill for a medically necessary surgery they had already approved. I remember the silence in the room. That thick, suffocating silence that comes right before anger explodes. My staff gathered around her, trying to calm her down. My chest tightened. My jaw locked. And a quiet fury simmered beneath my ribs. I sent my accounts manager to their local office immediately. I knew it had to be some misunderstanding. A clerical error. A glitch. Something fixable. Something sane. He returned an hour later, face red, fists clenched, voice trembling. They told me to buzz off, he said. Literally. They refused to listen. Something snapped inside me. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet, razor-sharp break. I drove to their office myself. They made me wait for an hour. Then told me the director was too busy to meet me. Too busy to explain why they broke their own agreement. Too busy to respect a client. Too busy for basic human decency. I walked out of that office with my hands shaking, not from fear, but from barely controlled rage. The kind that vibrates inside you like a warning siren. The kind that tells you this is no longer a simple inconvenience. This is personal. And I wasn't done. The next day, I boarded a flight to the capital and marched straight into their head office. The employees there barely looked up. When I demanded answers, they gave me the kind of expression you give a child who is struggling to understand something too difficult. They told me the policy had been revised a month ago. My employee's surgery, done 5 months ago. Their response? It applies retroactively. 12 months. I asked why I hadn't been informed. Their answer? We notified our large clients. We would inform smaller clients at renewal. Smaller clients. Low-end clients. That's when the VP's assistant delivered the final insult. He has no time for you. We're a large company. We don't argue semantics with small-scale buyers. If you don't like it, you can leave. That sentence, that tone, that arrogance. It didn't just anger me, it branded itself into my memory. And right there, in their glass-walled office, I made a silent promise. Not a loud threat. Not a dramatic declaration. Just a quiet vow. You think I'm small? You think I'm beneath you? You think you can disrespect me, harm my employee, and laugh about it? Fine. Then you won't just lose my business. You'll lose everything. I flew back home with one mission: to take away the very foundation they were standing on and make sure they never forgot the day they underestimated the wrong man. I didn't go home after returning from the capital, at least, not in the emotional sense. My body moved, my routine resumed, but my mind remained locked inside that cold, glass-walled office where a group of polished executives dismissed me like I was some insignificant speck of dust. Their voices kept replaying. Small client, low end, We don't have time for you. If you don't like it, leave. Each sentence had embedded itself into my skull like shards of broken glass, and the more I thought about it, the deeper those shards settled. At night I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my jaw scraping against pressure as I clenched it unconsciously. Every breath felt heavier, every memory more vivid. Their arrogance wasn't just insulting, it was deliberate, intentional, a message they wanted me to receive loud and clear. We are powerful. You are nothing. But they didn't know me. Not really. Not my patience, not my principles, and certainly not my breaking point. They didn't know that the quiet ones always carry the most dangerous storms. My directors noticed my silence immediately. They knew me well enough to recognize when something had pushed me too far. One of them, a close friend who'd been with me since my first business opened, called me into his office, closed the door, and simply asked, "What did they do to you?" I didn't answer with a speech. I just handed him the documentation, the rejected claim, the pre-approvals, the notes from the hospital, and the insultingly dismissive reply from their head office. He skimmed through the papers, and as he read, the color in his face changed from concern to irritation, and then to anger. He dropped the papers on the desk and muttered, "They messed with the wrong person." What's the plan? At that moment, the plan wasn't fully formed. The rage was there, yes. The disgust. The motivation. But revenge, real revenge, needs clarity, calmness, and precision. It cannot be rushed. So instead of promising destruction right away, I simply said, "Let's find out how long it takes to switch insurance companies." Those words were the match, and everything that followed was gasoline. My directors began reaching out to rival insurance companies discreetly, explaining our needs, our employee count, our requirements, and our willingness to pay for premium coverage. We didn't reveal the reason behind the search, not yet. Within 48 hours, we received a flood of responses. Some tried to lowball, some offered surface-level benefits, but one company, our soon-to-be new provider, presented an offer so comprehensive it felt almost unreal. Full medical coverage, dental, optical, mental health, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, rehab services, adaptive mobility devices, a dedicated relationship manager team, smart outpatient cards, death and funeral benefits, coverage for spouses and up to 6 dependents, a massive network, minimal waiting times. It was everything my employees deserved and more. It would cost me extra, yes, but I didn't flinch. It wasn't about money anymore. This was about dignity. When we confirmed the transition timeline 6 months, I felt something inside me click sharply into place. Like gears aligning. Like a lock opening. 6 months wasn't fast. 6 months wasn't convenient. But 6 months was enough. Enough to plan. Enough to prepare. Enough to make sure that when we left the old insurance company, we wouldn't just walk away quietly. They would feel every inch of the void we created. Before finalizing the deal, I did something that surprised even my directors. I personally drove to the hospital that had performed my employee's surgery, walked up to the billing department, and paid her medical bill in full. No hesitation. No negotiation. No blame placed on her shoulders. When I brought her the receipt the next day, she broke down crying, insisting she would pay me back every month until the amount was covered. I stopped her mid-sentence. "No," I said. "You're not paying a coin. This wasn't your fault. You don't owe me anything." Her hand shook as she held the receipt. Her eyes were red and wet, and in that moment, the weight of the situation settled even deeper into my bones. These were real people, real lives, real families, and the insurance company had treated them like disposable liabilities. That thought fueled me like nothing else. A few days later, we arranged a formal meeting with old insurance to begin transitioning out. They didn't take it seriously. They thought we were bluffing. They saw us as a small restaurant with a handful of employees, barely a dent in their portfolio. So when I arrived at their office, not alone, but flanked by several department heads and carrying multiple boxes of documentation, the expressions on their faces shifted from mild annoyance to visible confusion. I could see it happening in real time, like watching a slow dawn. One man glanced at the boxes, another at the crowd behind me. Their brows lifted, their posture stiffened. You could practically hear the gears turning in their heads. Why so many people? Why so many documents? How many businesses does this guy actually own? Their questions were answered moments later when my lawyer stepped forward and introduced me formally, by full name, by full background, and most importantly, by full business ownership portfolio. The silence that followed was unlike any I'd ever seen in a corporate room. It wasn't a polite silence. It was the silence of people realizing they had severely miscalculated. Panic flickered in their eyes like sparks. The manager who had once told my employee to buzz off suddenly couldn't look me in the face. One woman's hand actually trembled as she tried to sign the transition paperwork. And when they finally grasped the scale of what they were losing, every bar, every restaurant, every hotel, every cab service, every guard service, every rental building, their jaws tightened with the fear recognition that this wasn't a small client walking away. This was a tidal wave, a financial hemorrhage, a wound they couldn't patch. They begged. They pleaded. They offered discounts, waivers, emergency adjustments, revised terms. They tried to blame. Miscommunication, tried to pretend. They had always valued the partnership, but their apologies were as empty as their earlier arrogance had been full. I wasn't going to settle for meaningless words. Not after the disrespect. Not after the suffering they caused my employee. Not after the humiliation they thought they could bury me under. So I rejected every offer without a moment's hesitation. The final blow came when my lawyer announced the complete dissolution of all contracts within 6 weeks. The look on their faces, shock, disbelief, dread, was a work of art. But the story didn't end there. Oh no, that was merely the spark. Because as word spread through my personal circle, my friends, my extended family, my business partners, they all heard what the insurance company had done. They all heard the insult, the refusal, the arrogance. And almost instantly, they made a decision of their own. If they disrespected you, they disrespected us. And just like that, dozens of additional businesses, some large, some massive, began pulling their contracts from the same insurance provider, quietly, strategically, one by one. But at this point, I wasn't thinking about the revenge results. Not yet. My focus was on my people, my employees. 6 months is a long time to wait for full coverage, and I was terrified someone might fall seriously ill during the gap period. So my directors and I set up temporary medical funds, emergency travel allowances, and direct payment agreements with hospitals. We prepared for every scenario, every complication, every possible setback. And those preparations strengthened me. They reminded me why I had to follow this revenge through to the end, not for pride, not for ego, but for principle. As the transition approached, I felt the storm brewing not metaphorically, but inside me. A cold, calculated storm, the kind that doesn't roar. It simply arrives. And when the collapse began, I would be ready. Revenge never begins with noise. It begins in silence heavy, pressurized silence that builds inside you until the weight becomes unbearable. For weeks after our transition process started, that silence lived inside me. Every day I went to work, attended meetings, handled operations, checked on employees, oversaw updates. But mine was never fully in the room. It hovered over the memory of that VP's assistant telling me I wasn't worth their time. It hovered over the arrogance carved into their voices when they dismissed the suffering of an employee who had given her whole life to my company. That sentence, "If you don't like it, you can leave," kept echoing like a taunt, a slap, a challenge. It was the moment something inside me had changed forever. And the more I replayed it, the clearer my path became. But clarity alone doesn't bring peace. In fact, it brought the opposite. My sleep grew restless. My appetite disappeared. I would find myself sitting in my car long after reaching my destination, staring at the steering wheel while that same burning anger simmered beneath my ribs. It wasn't a loud anger. It was slow, heavy, controlled. The kind that forces you to see every detail with a sharpness you didn't know you possessed. The kind that turns you from a victim into something far more dangerous, a strategist. But even strategists feel doubt. There were moments late at night when I questioned myself. Was I going too far? Was this becoming personal to an unhealthy degree? Was I letting my ego lead? And then I would remember the look on my employee's face when she received that impossible medical bill. The fear, the humiliation, the exhaustion. I remembered how her hands trembled, how she blamed herself, how she broke down when she thought she had failed us, and every doubt evaporated. This wasn't about destroying a company out of spite. This was about justice, about dignity, about drawing a line so sharp and so clear that no company would ever dare cross it again. As the transition weeks ticked by, the old insurance company gradually began to sense the scale of what was happening. Rumors trickled out from internal sources. First confusion, then concern, then panic. They discovered that not only had my businesses pulled out, but dozens of connected businesses, some larger than mine, were quietly walking out behind me. Contracts worth millions evaporated before their eyes. And yet, they didn't know the full picture. They didn't know the flood hadn't even peaked yet. One evening, just after sunset, I received a call from their regional manager. His tone was strangely soft, almost forcibly polite. He started with apologies, long, flowery, insincere apologies. Then he attempted to convince me that everything had been a misunderstanding, that they valued our partnership, that my concerns were valid, that they were ready to negotiate. But respect cannot be summoned like a waiter. Once you reveal your true attitude, No script can hide it. I listened quietly, letting him ramble for 5 full minutes. Then I replied with the calmest voice I had used in a long time. "It's too late," and I hung up. That simple act ending the call without explanation was the moment the psychological roles reversed. I no longer felt like the person fighting for fairness. I felt like the verdict had already been delivered, and they were scrambling to appeal a judgment that was never going to change. Power shifted. Balance shifted. I could feel it. A few days later, another message arrived, this time from someone higher. A senior executive, the same individual who once refused to even acknowledge my existence, requested a meeting. I declined. The next day, another request came. I declined again. Then came a more desperate attempt, a letter personally signed by their vice president, dripping with false sincerity. They wanted to rebuild the relationship. They wanted to correct past mistakes. They wanted to demonstrate their commitment to service excellence. I didn't even bother responding. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't fueled by dramatic confrontations. It was fueled by silence. Silence is the most terrifying answer you can give to someone who is used to being in control. While all this unfolded, my employees continued working peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing on the other side. The older manager, the woman at the center of this conflict, had returned to full health. She walked around with a bright smile and renewed energy. Every time I saw her, I felt a wave of reassurance. It reminded me why this fight mattered. It grounded me. It reminded me that justice is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. As the final weeks approached, something unexpected happened. My family got involved. For years, they had kept their distance. We had cordial relationships, not close ones. They admired me, yes, but always through a lens of formality. But this time, things were different. I visited them during a holiday, and as soon as I walked in, my brother's children ran up to me, filling the house with noise and laughter. My older brother noticed the exhaustion on my face and pulled me aside. "What happened?" he asked. Normally, I would have brushed it off, but something told me to tell the truth. So I explained everything: the insurance, the disrespect, the medical bill, the insult, the transition. By the time I finished, the room felt heavier. My brother stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "They really said that to you? They really treated your employee like that?" "Yes," I replied. My brother didn't say anything else. He simply stood up, grabbed his phone, and made a call. A short call, a powerful one. And within a week, his businesses pulled their contracts too. Then my cousins, then my uncles, then family friends we rarely spoke to but who respected the name our family carried. The chain reaction spread wider than I could have orchestrated myself. It turned from a personal fight into a collective stand against corporate arrogance. And that was when I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was a message echoing across the entire industry. 2 weeks before our transition completed, the old insurance company sent a team directly to my offices. Not managers, not assistants, high-level executives. They arrived in suits that probably cost more than some people's rent, wearing smiles so forced they looked painful. When my secretary told me they were waiting, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of the irony. These were the same people who once didn't have time for me, and now they were sitting in my lobby like nervous students, waiting outside the principal's office. I let them wait. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Not out of pettiness, but because power must be witnessed to be understood. When I finally walked in, they stood up as if their chairs had caught fire. The first executive extended his hand, but I didn't take it. I sat down without greeting them. They followed, awkward and tense. They began talking apologies upon apologies, assurances, promises, discounts, upgrades, anything they could offer to keep us. Their words spilled out quickly, like people who knew the roof was collapsing and were trying to hold it up with their bare hands. I listened, stone-faced. No emotion, no nod, no reaction. When they finished, I simply asked, "Where was this energy when my employee needed you?" They froze. The room fell dead silent. One of them tried to stutter out an explanation, but I cut him off. "Save it, we're done." And with that single sentence, I ended the meeting. They tried to plead. They tried to follow me. My security escorted them out. That was the moment I truly understood something. Revenge doesn't begin when you strike back. Revenge begins when they realize they can no longer control the outcome. The clock ran out. The 6 weeks ended. The transition was complete. And now it was time to watch the consequences unfold. Because the real storm, the real downfall, was only beginning. Alex didn't sleep the night he made the decision to take down Titan Insurance. His mind was a storm, every memory of humiliation replaying on loop. Bradley's arrogant grin, Jessica's fake sympathy, Mason's cruelty, the VP mocking him, the investigators shaming him, that phone call where they laughed at his loss. Everything burned inside him like gasoline waiting for a spark. And now, finally, he had one. He had everything he needed, the documents, the recordings, the fraudulent reports, the list of fake claims approvals, the shell company routing logs, the employees involved, and undeniable proof of a multi-million-dollar scam. But gathering proof was only half the war. The real battle, exposing the giant without letting them bury him first. Alex spent days building a digital fortress. He scrubbed metadata, encrypted files, stored duplicates across multiple cloud servers under anonymous names, mailed encrypted drives to 2 people he trusted, and set automatic triggers if he didn't log in for 72 hours. Everything would be released publicly. Titan Insurance had money, connections, legal muscle, and a reputation polished with lies. He knew the moment he struck, they would try to silence him. But he also knew something they didn't. Alex wasn't afraid to burn the entire company down, even if it meant standing in the smoke. Though exhausted, he didn't break. He sharpened. 2 weeks later, he launched Phase 1, exposure through anonymity. He created a burner identity, Policy Ghost, and uploaded redacted documents to a whistleblower portal used by investigative journalists. He didn't upload everything, just enough to make reporters salivate. Within hours, the first journalist contacted him through the encrypted channel. Her name was Lydia Cray, a relentless investigative reporter famous for ripping apart corporate corruption. She asked for one thing: prove this isn't fabricated. Alex sent her a small portion of the recordings, Bradley, admitting they deny legitimate claims to keep margins clean. Her response came in: Less than 1 minute. Meet me. He didn't meet her physically. Too dangerous. Instead, he set up a virtual call with distortion. She listened to the files, read the documents, reviewed the data trail, and Alex heard the shift in her breathing, the moment when a journalist realizes she's holding dynamite. "This is the biggest insurance fraud case I've ever seen," Lydia whispered. "And you're in danger." Alex already knew that, but hearing it spoken aloud made the danger feel heavier, more real, as if the walls around him tightened. Lydia didn't waste time. "I'm going to pitch this to my editor. When the story breaks, it's going national." Phase 2 began before Lydia even wrote the first word. Alex submitted the full evidence package to the State Insurance Commission, then the Consumer Protection Bureau, then the Corporate Fraud Division. He filed everything anonymously, using a rotating VPN chain, but he knew anonymity in such cases rarely survived long. Titan Insurance had deep roots, and roots can dig into any system. But Alex didn't care. He had already decided, even if they came for him, the information was out. The machine had started moving. 3 days later, Titan Insurance felt the tremors. Internal emails leaked later would show executives panicking. Who accessed claim batch 342? Why are these numbers appearing publicly? Find the source immediately. Bradley was one of the first to crack. During a meeting, he screamed that whoever leaked information would beg to disappear. Ironically, he was talking about the man he fired, the man he mocked for losing everything, the man who was now dismantling his entire world piece by piece. But Alex wasn't done. Not even close. Phase 3 was more dangerous. Infiltration. He still had access to the old shared drive on one of Titan's archive systems because I never fully revoked his secondary credentials. Their mistake. His opportunity. Late at night, Alex slipped into the system, downloading every file related to internal audits, deleted messages, private memos, and risk spreadsheets. But accessing wasn't enough. He planted silent trackers. So when the executives began deleting incriminating files, he captured every deletion, every timestamp, every digital shred. It was evidence of a cover-up. And cover-ups destroy companies faster than original crimes. Meanwhile, Lydia was preparing the expose. She told Alex the editors needed more confirmation, more timestamps, more context. Alex delivered everything she needed. One night, she asked him a question he wasn't expecting. "Why are you doing this? Revenge?" He paused. For the first time, he put the truth into words. "Because they stole my peace. They treated my pain like a joke. They ruined my life to protect profit margins. And I want them to feel the consequences they thought they were too powerful to face." Lydia didn't say anything for a moment, but Alex could feel the respect in her silence. Then came the moment Alex had been preparing for. Titan Insurance discovering him. It started with a message from an unknown number. "We know what you're doing. Stop before you destroy yourself." Alex didn't respond. Hours later, someone tried to hack into one of his cloud backups, but the failsafe triggered, immediately sending the entire evidence package to 5 journalists instead of 1. Titan had just pulled the wrong lever. The trap snapped shut. Bradley, cornered and terrified, tried to save himself by throwing lower employees under the bus. He wrote emails blaming Mason, accusing Jessica of forging documents, insisting he was never aware of internal fraud. Unfortunately for him, Alex had the recordings where Bradley bragged about manipulating claim approvals. And Lydia had them now too. The night before the article was scheduled to go live, Alex walked outside for the first time in days. The air felt different, colder, sharper, heavy with a strange mix of fear and anticipation. He knew tomorrow would change everything. Titan Insurance would fall. People would lose jobs. Executives would face charges. Bradley's career would implode. And Alex? He would become the man who stood up against a giant and won. Even if they dragged him into court, even if he faced backlash, even if he had to disappear temporarily, he didn't care. He had already won the moment he stopped being afraid of them. At 6:14 a.m. the next morning, the article went live. And within minutes, the world exploded. When Titan Insurance collapsed, it didn't fall slowly. It didn't crumble like an old building losing balance. It detonated a full corporate implosion that started with a single article and spread like wildfire, consuming every liar, every corrupt manager, every greedy executive who thought they were too big to fail. Within the first hour, the news had gone viral. People shared screenshots, quotes, leaked audio clips, and internal documents across every platform. Insurance company denies. Legitimate claims to boost profit. Margins. Whistleblower exposes multi-million. Scam. Executives knew and covered it. Up, Alex watched from his apartment in complete silence, staring at the glowing screen as notifications exploded faster than he could read them. For a moment, he didn't move. He just breathed, slowly, deeply, almost in disbelief at what he had started. His entire body felt lighter, like someone had been pressing on his chest for months and finally stepped back. Titan's headquarters was hit harder than any storm. Employees scrambled, phones rang uncontrollably, lawyers flooded the building, and executives hid in conference rooms trying to figure out how their empire had fallen apart overnight. Bradley, who once smirked when he fired Alex, spent the morning screaming into his phone, shoving blame on everyone around him. Jessica tried to act innocent, to pretend she didn't know anything, but leaked emails proved she was knee-deep in forged approvals. Mason tried to disappear completely, deactivating the company group chats he used to bully staff, but all deleted messages were already in the hands of reporters. Titan wasn't dealing with a scandal. It was dealing with a mass extinction event. By noon, the State Insurance Commission issued an emergency suspension of Titan's license. By evening, 3 federal agencies announced a joint investigation. By night, law firms began building class action lawsuits on behalf of every person Titan had wrongfully denied, including Alex's own family claims, which were now being reviewed publicly. And the cherry on top: investors began pulling money, stockholders dumped shares, and the market responded brutally. In 24 hours, Titan Insurance went from a powerful corporate giant to a bleeding carcass, surrounded by vultures. But while the world cheered, Alex's day wasn't over. Around 9 p.m., he received a message on his encrypted channel. It was Lydia. Turn on channel 8 now. He grabbed the remote, switched to the news, and froze. The anchor was reporting something that made his heart race. New evidence suggests a senior operations manager at Titan Insurance directly orchestrated claim denials, pressured staff to ignore policyholders, and personally benefited through a shell company linked to fraudulent payouts. Then they showed his face. Bradley Cole. Not Titan Insurance. Not a vague department. Bradley, the man who humiliated him. The man who mocked his family's struggle. The man who laughed while approving fake claims and denying real ones. Now the world knew exactly who he was. Within minutes, Bradley's social media exploded with rage. Thousands of comments attacked him, questioned him, mocked him, demanded his arrest. His face became the image of corruption. Journalists camped outside his house. His reputation, career, ego, everything he built on cruelty shattered like glass dropped from a rooftop. Alex didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He just watched quietly, absorbing the moment. Revenge wasn't supposed to feel like fireworks. Sometimes it felt like quiet justice settling into your bones. But the universe wasn't done yet. 2 days later, the police officially arrested Bradley. Cameras captured him being led out of his house in handcuffs, still yelling, still trying to blame rogue employees and false whistleblowers. But the evidence spoke louder than he ever could. Jessica was fired the same morning, escorted out of the office while employees recorded her using their phones. Mason received a legal notice demanding cooperation with investigators. The VP resigned hours before an official subpoena hit his desk. Titan Insurance's CEO tried to hold a press conference, but reporters swallowed him alive. Lawsuit after lawsuit launched until the company declared emergency bankruptcy. The fall was complete. And yet, the world still didn't know who did it. One night, Lydia sent Alex a message. People are asking who the whistleblower is. I won't expose you, ever. But if you ever want to speak, the platform is yours. Alex read the message again and again. For the first time since the nightmare began, he felt something warm inside: validation, respect, a voice telling him he counted. He typed back a single line, "Not yet." Alex spent the next few months rebuilding his life. He found a new job, this time with a company that valued ethics and transparency. They admired his knowledge, his work ethic, his resilience. He moved into a better apartment, one without the cracks and leaks of the old place. His health improved. His sleep returned. His confidence rebuilt itself slowly, piece by piece. And then one morning, something happened that nearly brought him to tears. A large envelope arrived at his door with a seal from the State Insurance Commission. Alex opened it and found a letter. "We have reviewed your case. Your claim has been officially approved. You will receive full compensation plus damages for wrongful denial." At the bottom was a handwritten note from the director himself. "You did the right thing. Thank you for your courage." For a long time, Alex just stood there, staring at the letter, feeling every emotion wash over him. He remembered the nights he cried wondering how he would fix everything. The days he worked extra shifts. The humiliation he endured. The anger that fueled him. The fight he never asked for but was forced to wage. And now, finally, justice had come full circle. The final blow came months later when Lydia released a follow-up documentary exposing Titan Insurance's entire corruption network. And at the end, without showing his name or face, she said one sentence that immortalized him. All it took was one brave man who refused to back down. Alex wasn't a victim anymore. He wasn't powerless. He wasn't broken. He was the man who brought a corrupt empire to its knees. And he did it alone. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. until the very end. Revenge wasn't just destroying Titan Insurance. Revenge was becoming someone they could never break again.